Reddit, at what moment did you realize you were dating an idiot? He took me out to my favorite restaurant, a chic little upscale cafe, for dinner on Valentine's Day and made fun of the way I pronounced filet. He tried to get the waiter on his side. Can you believe this? Ha ha ha. She wants the filet I. Then he leans upwards conspiratorially. She means the fillet, obviously. Ha ha ha. Then he wouldn't shut up about it. I was like, it's French. The ed sound is pronounced A, but he wasn't having it. Kept going on and on about how stupid I must be, until he dropped me off at home. I told him we were done the next day. When he blamed the loan company, I said I had $20,000 in student loan debt. He said he had something like $20,000 too. He then changed his answer to $40,000. Then thought about it and didn't know. I pressured him to actually figure it out. Turns out, he owed $120,000 in student loans. He blamed the loan company for not telling him how much he was taking out. He blamed them for making him pay it all back. I pointed out that the information was on the forms he signed every year. He said that it was unrealistic for them to make him read all of that information. My favorite part is that his degree is in communication. Every time I went to her house, there were small brown/melted V-shapes in the carpet. I always wondered what they were. Then one day, I went over one time and saw her hair straightener lying on the carpet. She left it on all the ducking time and would just go to work. Like, how have you not burned your apartment complex down yet? Picture this, high school 1980-ish. Boyfriend and I went to see Friday the 13th movie and I would hide my eyes when the scary music started. Turns out I'm not a fan of horror for sake of blood. After the movie my boyfriend was pissed at me and accused me of seeing the movie before. He thought that was why I knew something scary was coming up. It couldn't have been the formula scary music. Lol. That moment I decided to go to college and not marry my high school sweetheart. Not me, but a best friend in high school. Hanging out with her BF and my BF. We were having a conversation on who the richest people in the world were. He says I know who the richest guy in the world was. Johnny Appleseed. We all laugh. He continues, yeah, because he invented oxygen. Crickets unfazed by all our blank stares and silence. He proceeds to say, because Johnny Appleseed invented trees, and trees make oxygen. He was 100% serious. When she told me that the wind comes from trees, you know, because they wave around, and that pushes the air around, making wind. No, she was not joking. She didn't know how a boner worked. Not saying she was bad in bed, she literally thought that a penis would fill with semen/sperm when it was erect, not blood. She thought the whole thing was just full of man juice. When we didn't go to the museum I wanted to because he couldn't find the parking garage, we literally drove around the museum and parking garage 3 times. He couldn't figure out how to get inside to park, so he got back on the interstate and we went home. This was on Valentine's Day. I was a vegetarian when we were dating. Pretty early on he asked if I ate fish. I said no, I don't eat any animals. To which he replied, a fish isn't an animal, it's a mammal. I didn't even know what to say, I just walked out of the room. When he nodded and said yes as the moving van rental guy explained the height of the truck and what clearance was needed, then half an hour later, he drove it into the parking garage at our apartment complex and ran it into a low beam, smashing the top of the truck. Then he claimed he hadn't been warned about low clearances and I was making up/imagining the entire prior conversation. Then he drove said moving truck at 80 miles per hour on a speed-trapped highway. Trooper ticketed him, said he wasn't ticketing me because I really had no choice but to try to keep up with that idiot. The relationship didn't last a whole lot longer. Told her I was excited to see a movie coming out soon. Lord of the Rings. She told me that it was her favorite book. How likely is it to find a 9/10 who is into books? Went to the theater. You know how the movie begins? Telling the story about the rings and all. Sometime around Rivendell she turns to me and asks when the kids get to the island. Asks me when does the plane crash. She sat through around an hour of Gandalf, Gollum and hobbits before asking when does Lord of the Rings become Lord of the Flies. When he thought the moonlight shining down on the water through a hole in the clouds, with the sun coming up through the ocean. I was riding the bus to school with my then girlfriend in 12th grade. I made some reference about us living on the west coast. She then began to correct me and say we live on the east coast. This argument continued for 15 minutes on the bus and people looked at her like she was crazy. It wasn't till later she found out we live on the west coast. BTW, we lived in California at the time. Years ago, dated a guy who was a little vain to say the least. One day while playing cards I asked him to put on his mirrored aviator sunglasses because I found him so attractive when he wore them. Needless to say, I won every hand. That was 35 years ago and my mother still laughs at what an idiot he was. He listened to Alex Jones, used crystals to heal himself and predict the future, never mind when he was wrong. Thought the CIA snuck our apartment when we weren't home. Couldn't hold down a telephone hotline job for more than 6 months. Then again, I was stupid for staying in that relationship as long as I did. When I was trying to teach her how to drive, she hops into the driver's seat and immediately starts driving down the road on the wrong side of the road, insisting that I was wrong. She was 17 at the time. I reached over and turned the ignition off, pulled the keys out, and jerked the emergency brake. I screamed, "Get the hell out of my car." It took 2 days and several of her friends to convince her that she was wrong. I'm not kidding. Dead serious. This was 31 years ago. My wife, naughty person that she is, looked her up on Facebook. She has had a terrible life. When he said President Obama himself, not the army, not representatives, but the president in person, was going to come to his house and take his guns, I knew he was a conservative. It was casual, and we didn't see each other for long. I was in the mood for something different, but that conversation got me laughing in his face. That was the last date. We were having dinner when I mentioned I couldn't eat cheese because I'm lactose intolerant. He asked how I could eat eggs. I told him that lactose was found in dairy, which comes from cows. He vehemently rejected my explanation that eggs did not come from cows and were not dairy, and wouldn't believe me until he googled it for himself. Does married to one count? I was 12 weeks pregnant, working 2 jobs with a schedule of 5 days a week, 6 am to 8:30 pm, one day 6 am to 2 pm, and one day 2 pm to 8:30 pm. He had one job and worked from 6 am to 3:30 pm 5 days a week. He played video games the rest of the time. I still had to clean the house. I asked him to take my clean work shirts out of the dryer and fold them because I needed them for the next day. Next day I can't find them. Not in the dryer, not in the dresser, they just disappeared. Finally, after tearing apart the house, I find them in the bottom of a basket of dirty clothes by the washer and dryer. He had taken all the dirty clothes out of the basket, took my shirts out of the dryer, put them in the bottom of the basket, and put the dirty clothes back in, simply because he didn't want to fold them. There was 5 work shirts in that dryer. I bet it took him longer to do that than to just fold the damn shirts. I later found out he was throwing my nice silverware away because he didn't want to wash them. Ex-boyfriend was either an idiot or a pathological liar. Believed if a road, like US I-95, physically went north-south-north, the name of the road changed from I-95N to I-95S, then back to I-95N, all on the same stretch of road. He claimed he was going to buy an island in the middle of a local river, even though the majority of the islands were so small that they would sometimes disappear/appear/move whenever it flooded. He claimed to take a sleep study that showed he only needed 2 hours of sleep at night, unlike most people who need 8. He claimed it was illegal to have speed limits less than 35 miles per hour. He claimed his Mercury Cougar was a Jaguar. He said other stuff, but those were some of his main beliefs. I dated him for way too long. We went to a hat store in the mall, since he wanted to get hats for his baseball team he was starting, and when the salesman told him the price for the embroidery he was so confused and kept asking him how much to get the design on the hat done. He didn't know what embroidery meant. When gas prices were really high, she forwarded me this email about how if everyone didn't buy gas on a certain day of the week, it would force oil companies to lower their gas prices and increase production for some shit like that. I tried explaining to her it would literally make no difference because on the following day everyone would buy slightly more gas and the net gas usage would remain the same. She wasn't having it. when he told me he believed some kind of Illuminati/Freemason conspiracy, I can't remember which. He also skipped so many school days in favor of sleeping at home that he didn't graduate, which is exactly what I told him would happen. He wasn't exactly book stupid, if that's even a thing, but the guy had very little common sense. He thought that the pull-out method was foolproof.